Fantastic new podcast, Sisters-in-Law, with our legal ladies, Jill Winebanks, right, Joyce Vance, and Barb McQuade, who joins us now. Hello, Barb.
Hello, Stephanie. Good morning.
Congratulations on your smash hit new podcast.
Oh, thanks so much. It's been a lot of fun. You know, as you named Joyce Vance and Jill Winebanks, also we have Kimberly Atkins, and it's really fun to talk about the law in what we hope is an accessible and lively way.
Well, what a great timing for it to come out. I know you always try to be classy and dignified. Don't want to badmouth other lawyers, but oh dear God, Trump's lawyers. Yeah. Your initial thoughts?
Well, I think that they did the best they could with the material they have to work with. I think that they tap danced around all of the issues because the case against President Trump is so strong. That's why they were talking about things like bills of attainder and due process. I saw that kind of tactic myself when I was a prosecutor. If the defense really had nothing in terms of material to use in the case, you know, the facts and law against them, that's when they started talking about constitutional provisions and other kinds of things. So I've seen that uncomfortable kind of tap dance around the facts and the law before, and I attribute it not so much to bad lawyering as to a bad case.
Yeah, well, yeah. You said for instance, on Twitter, you said Trump's lawyers arguing he's entitled to due process. Agreed, but in what way has it been denied? This is what this trial is for. You also said this defense is the most Trumpian thing I've ever heard. His lawyer accuses House managers of proceeding because of hate, not justice. Turn on the gaslight and blame the victim for rebuttal. Just post Trump's January 6th tweets again. It really, like I say, it's interesting how a lot of lay people that don't know the law like you do just had some of the same reactions just off the top of our heads, right?
Yeah, it really seemed like a game of distraction. You don't want to go down this road because then we'll turn the tables on you when Republicans control the Senate. There really wasn't a whole lot on the merits or even on this constitutional question, which was the purported reason they were there today. You know, we heard about bills of attainder, which has just no application whatsoever when it comes to impeachment. Of course, the impeachment is about Donald Trump. You know, a bill of attainder is a law designed to deprive a particular person of the law. You know, if I were to make it a crime for Stephanie Miller to own property, that's a classic bill of attainder. That's illegal under our Constitution. Right. But that's about, making laws crimes, not about impeachment. Of course it's about the president. That's right. What an impeachment is all about.
By the way, I've been able to achieve not being able to afford a house by virtue of being in progressive radio. So I accomplished that myself without the law, Barb. But thank you. I loved your other tweet. You said, this argument suggesting we're trading liberty for security is a complete non sequitur. No one is seeking to take away Trump's liberty. This trial is about whether he is fit to serve as president of the United States in the future. However, I did think it was a novel defense to suggest arresting your client, which they did, right?
They even said that the Department of Justice is perfectly capable of prosecuting Donald Trump. Let them take care of that. That's a dangerous road to go down, suggesting perhaps that if he wins an impeachment, then this case should be dealt with criminally. I think President Trump would rather be convicted by the Senate than by a court where the consequences might bring prison time. And it's not an either or, by the way. The Constitution itself says nothing about impeachment and conviction should prevent there from being an indictment and trial and judgment and punishment in the criminal courts. So it's a separate matter, and those laws that protect individuals in a criminal case don't apply in an impeachment proceeding.
It certainly seems to me, but you're more the expert. Do you think, it seems to me he should be criminally charged for this. Do you think he will be?
I don't know. I think that's a separate question, and I think the facts will matter. Based solely on his speech on January 6th, I think that he has some defenses there about using words like peaceful. But I think investigators would look at the whole course of conduct, the things he said before, during, and after the insurrection. All of those things matter in terms of his criminal intent. It's a high standard, you'd have to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt that he intended to incite those people and that it was likely that they would be incited. Whereas the standard here is very different. It is whether he is fit to serve as president, and one who foments violence the way he did. Was it just reckless? Was it just foreseeable that he would have that outcome? And I think for someone who said things like, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose any supporters, I think there's very strong evidence that it was foreseeable that there would be some violence when he threw gasoline on the flames the way he did.
And so he seems to have, he seems to have some consciousness of guilt, Barb, if, the reporting is correct, that he's been asking lawyers lately, is he criminally liable for this?
Yeah, that's an interesting take on that, wondering if he does face criminal exposure. I know there's been some reporting that he asked about that. It's very difficult to get into the mind of Donald Trump. He sees the world so differently from the rest of us. But I think that as the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia builds its case, they so far have gone after what might be referred to as the low-hanging fruit, those who are breaking windows and storming the Capitol and entering restricted spaces. They're now starting to come out with some conspiracy charges, those who pre-planned to be there at the Capitol. And I think if there is evidence of that sort of thing, President Trump being involved in any of the pre-planning, then I think that would be strong evidence.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot we still don't know. Who planted these bombs? Who actually killed Officer Sicknick? I mean, there's just so much that we obviously are still trying to find out. What about the rioters themselves, Barb, legally? I'm just reading one right in front of me now. Indicted MAGA rioter Jenna Ryan now admits that Trump lied to her about the election being stolen. She said, I bought into a lie, and the lie is the lie. It's embarrassing. I regret everything. Obviously, it's not just that we have all this video we saw yesterday, them saying the president sent us, Trump sent us, Trump, asked us to do this, but they're arguing that in court as well. So what weight does that carry legally?
Well, I think for those individuals, it's not going to be a valid defense. It might be something a judge will consider at the time of sentencing, but the law doesn't recognize any public authority defense for people who are civilians. You can't say that, I killed because my leader told me to. That's not going to cut it there. Police officers, under color of law, sometimes are able to rely on that defense because it is their duty to protect the public. They can sometimes do things like speed and drive through intersections and even use deadly force where it is merited. But the rest of us are required to comply with the law. So I don't think that's going to cut it as a defense. I suppose when a judge is considering where within the range of potential sentences to impose sentence on a defendant, they might consider that fact that they were they thought that their president was directing them to do this.
But how damning for Trump, I guess, was my real question.
Mm-hmm.
How damning for Trump is what we heard on tape, the rioters saying, or what they're saying in court?
I think it's relevant only because it shows how foreseeable it was that members of his supporters would take him at his word when he said, we need to fight. If you don't fight, you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to march down Pennsylvania Avenue. I think all of those things demonstrate that, this wasn't the first time he's ever spoken to a crowd. He's spoken to rallies. We know that Cesar Sayoc, the man who sent the pipe bombs, did so because of his support for President Trump. And so I think, was it foreseeable that they would take the bait and engage in violence? And I think that all of those statements tend to support the argument that he should have done that.
Let's quickly, before we lose you, Barb, talk about what he did during the insurrection. Some of that was covered yesterday in the video, correct? But, the reporting is he was gleeful, and he wouldn't even take phone calls because he was so enjoying what he was watching. Not only would he not call in the National Guard, he wouldn't even take phone calls. Chris Christie, one of his biggest supporters, said he couldn't reach him, so he went on George Stephanopoulos. And take a listen in terms of whether they're going to use this or whether they should. This is Chris Christie.
I've been spending the last 25 minutes or so trying to get the president on the phone myself to say this to him directly. I haven't been successful yet, but I'm going to continue to try, and it's pretty simple. The president caused this protest to occur. He's the only one who can make it stop. And it's not good enough. What the vice president just said is not good enough. What the president said is not good enough. The president has to come out and tell his supporters to leave the Capitol grounds and to allow the Congress to do their business peacefully. And anything short of that is an abrogation of his responsibility.
Barb, if I were working on your team, I would be anti-Barb. Can we use this today?
Yeah, so, that statement alone, I think, is some indication of what was happening. What I would want to do as a House manager is call witnesses who were there with President Trump while it was happening.
Yeah.
My witnesses, I think, in this case could be so incredibly important. If there are witnesses who can say that I was with him that day at the White House, and he did know that it was getting out of hand, he was watching it, he was gleeful, he has, unlike many of the rest of us, an affirmative duty to act to take care that the laws be faithfully executed in this country. And so he had a duty when he knew that there was some threat that Congress would be unable to execute the 12th Amendment. He has a duty to take care that that happened. If he did sit back for 2 hours and watch it all unfold, if he was gleeful, all of those things are incredibly damning that did commit a high crime or misdemeanor. And so I think that's why it's important that we hear from those witnesses. There's been reporting in the media that all of those things occurred, that people close to him did say those things. Let's hear from those witnesses. Let's send a subpoena to Mark Meadows and other people and say, what was happening during this time when lives were being lost in the Capitol?
Yeah. How could we get the top legal ladies in the country with the #1 podcast in the country, #Sisters-in-Law, Barb McQuade, Jill Wine-Banks yesterday, Joyce Vance, Kimberly Atkins, sorry. Why? Because they have the new #1 podcast.
That's right. Congratulations.
And it's almost impossible to get them impeachment week, but I'm like, they have a new podcast. Go, Travis, get them. Barb, thanks so much for taking time, and congrats again on the podcast.
Thanks. It's #Sisters-in-Law. We appreciate the plug so much.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Barb. There she goes. All right.